As a child growing up, I didn't have the typical best friend. My best friend woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He watched Westerns. He wore a white button up with khakis every single day. And he couldn't run. He could walk. And he walked very slowly with a cane. But my best friend could drive. But every time I rode in a car with him, I put on my seatbelt and I said my prayer, because sometimes he ended up on the wrong side of the road, and sometimes he would get flicked off or someone would blow the horn at him and he would wave and smile. I don't think he knew that they were upset. I'm pretty sure he thought that they were just being nice and waving to him. Definitely not the case. My best friend was my grandfather, but unfortunately he passed away about 15 years ago. But I'm going to tell you why my grandpa was my best friend. When I was 7 years old, my family and I moved in with my grandfather so we could help take care of him because my grandmother died. I remember like it was yesterday, just all the things that he would do. I remember every time he would walk down the hallway, you could hear his foot and his cane and the same tune that he hummed every single time he walked down the hallway. One instance in particular, I remember it was early in the morning and I didn't feel like being bothered because I was so tired. I knew he was coming to bother me, so I put the blanket over my head and I tried to pretend like I was asleep. I forgot to tuck my feet inside so he couldn't get me. Well, I waited and I knew he was going to do something. He took his finger and he slid it down the base of my foot. I jumped up and I screamed and I fell off the side of the bed. He laughed so hard that he had to sit down. Crazy. I tried to get my grandfather so many times by scaring him. I would creep into his room. He did not have good hearing. He couldn't really hear at all. But every time I crept into his room and I got close to him, he would tell me, "Boo, I hear you. I know you're there." I'd walk away and try again. And I never really figured out how he knew I was there until one day he told me. He could see me from his favorite chair in the mirror. Whatever. Now, unlike my other friends, my best friend loved rainy days, and so did I. When it rained, my grandfather would drive me and my sister to the bus stop, and he would make sure we did not get wet. We would sit in the back seat, and we would listen to the rain drop on his car. We would lay back and relax and watch the rain slide down the windows. It was nothing big and special, but it was to us. And if it was still raining, he would be at the bus stop waiting for us. And that meant that he was driving us straight to Hardee's to get our favorite sandwiches, which was a char grill burger and a Coke. My favorite. Now, my best friend and I, we had special TV time and we had a lineup. We watched Wheel of Fortune, which I'm pretty sure he watched was because of Vanna White. And then Jeopardy. I think he liked it because he really laughed when they got incorrect answers, which was pretty much all the time. I don't think that he watched Jeopardy to answer the questions. He just liked when they got them wrong. We also liked to watch Walker, Texas Ranger together. He loved to see Cordell Walker kicking some guy in the face. He died laughing every single time, and I would just look at him and shake my head. Oh, and he also liked when he would jump through the windows to save the day and see the bad guys flying out the window or through a table or the wall. He thought it was hilarious. Now, we also watched Westerns together. I learned a lot about Westerns over the years, especially if they included James Arness, Clint Eastwood, and Gene Autry. Don't forget John Wayne, one of my grandpa's favorites. We would get snacks and we would watch for hours. Now, as I got older and I got to the dating age, my grandfather would tell guys that I didn't live there anymore, or I moved, which is the same thing. Or he would tell them that I was chasing a cat up in the tree. That was one of the craziest things I ever heard him tell someone, I was trying to get my cat out of the tree. He was watching from the window laughing. And if the boys continued to call after he told them that I moved, he would sing into the phone until they hung up. And no guys wanted to call my house. And I told him, "Grandpa, you need to be nice because one day these guys are going to be your future grandson. It's a possibility. He said, no, not happening. Well, in 2004, I lost my grandfather. He went into the hospital. Even though he had been so many times in his life, I knew that my grandfather was going to come out. But on this particular occasion, the last time that I saw him, I told him that I loved him. I would see him the next day, and he didn't say anything. He couldn't speak. He just squeezed my hand. And I told him that I loved him. He didn't let me go. So I gave him another hug, and I kissed him on the forehead. And I said, I'll see you tomorrow, Grandpa. I love you. Well, I went to work the next day, and they told me to come into the office. They needed to talk to me. I said, okay. So I went in there, and they told me to have a seat. Not thinking that, anything bad. I know my grandpa's in the hospital, but it's not him. Well, they told me he had passed away. And that was one of the hardest moments in my life, to lose my grandfather. But he left me. Yes, he did. But he left me with a love for game shows. He left me with memories. He left me with my favorite to this day, a love for rainy days. I miss you, Grandpa. Until we meet again. Thank you.